Welcome back. You've tuned into Big Deal and we are discussing the global trends in litigation, and now you're going to focus also on the technological shift and how it is impacting the global trends in litigation. So John, why don't you tell us what are the new types of litigation that's really coming in with the emergence of technology, data analytics and artificial intelligence?
Well, look, we've known for a long time, we've talked about globally, conversation about the importance of technology and the importance of intellectual property and intellectual property capital. Yes. I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's really how important that technology and intellectual property capital is. Yes. And we're seeing increasing disputes among major operating companies relating to intellectual property claims. As companies see their intellectual property capital as a way of protecting, it's kind of a moat around their businesses. So certainly there's a definite increase in IP, intellectual property type claims. I think artificial intelligence, a lot of people have said it, it's almost a commonplace now. It clearly is a revolution. You know, I like to quote Lenin on this. Lenin said, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are months when decades happen. And we've been living through months when decades happen. These large language models, the generative AI, ChatGPT and the like are just going to revolutionize things. They're going to revolutionize the legal profession. They're raising all sorts of new issues relating to the training sets on which these programs are trained. Our courts are facing novel questions, like if the training set includes material that's copyrighted or is intellectual property capital, is that fair use to use that to train a generative AI program? Does it violate people's rights of privacy or right of publicity and the like? The rules about scraping and terms of service, are there breach of contract claims that are being created? So these are all being presented in the courts right now. These claims are being brought, and the courts are going to have to are having to react to that and come up with answers to traditional kinds of questions, these type of legal theories, but how they apply to this new technology.
That's right. Law is evolving on that side. So Cyril Shroff, when we talk about the technological shift, of course, data privacy and also privacy laws, data protection, all of them have been coming and being inbuilt as policy by the government. How do you see AI and the clash with the IP laws really developing in India at the moment?
So there is currently a gap on regulating AI. In India, and there's part of a public debate that is going on as to whether the forthcoming Digital India Act or any other regulation should be providing a framework for artificial intelligence, particularly how to regulate it. I think that gap will get filled. Because there is now a hot discussion around it, and we still haven't introduced the new legislation, so there is probably an opportunity for doing that. And I think we will follow what's happening in other parts of the world. We'll have a chat briefly about what's happening in the EU, which has taken the lead on trying to regulate AI. But this is all very new. And technology always tends to move far ahead of the policy or the legislation that is devised to regulate it. And India, given its huge population, the large volume of data as well, and just the importance of India in the world of technology, I think India is going to be a very important player. We are not a side player at all. I think we are going to be, as a nation, we are going to be very much front and center of how AI develops and how it will be eventually regulated. And it is already having profound implications on different professions, especially those which are based on knowledge, like legal or management consulting and so many others.
So it's not just law which is evolving with it, even tax is evolving in the same fashion, and even antitrust. So everything is moving in that direction to accommodate the new changes. But, intellectual property law is much wider than just the technological shift that we are seeing. So Cyril Shroff, how is that particular aspect at the moment, and what is being talked about when it comes to IP in business aspects, art and various other types?
So I think that they're two separate topics, but there is a crossover. India has moved a bit more slowly in the sort of general IP protection and the framework for that, but we're getting better. I think our courts are also passing important interim orders which are meant to protect sort of IP violations. But the part where it crosses over is especially the kind of things that John mentioned, where huge sort of technology, whether it's the large language models or new technologies actually using data, or it is using intellectual property rights which could belong to somebody else. So there's a gap over there.
Yes.
And that gap, we still don't know how it's going to be filled. So there are more questions than answers at this point of time. And generally, India has not had a great reputation in the past on IP protection. So we have some catching up to do.
We have a lot of catching up to do, and we have been slow. John, a lot of times something which is so core to India, on that certain US agencies or companies or entities have really taken the IP in their favor, and there have been litigations. We have seen that. How do you view India in IP laws from the outside, and how do you see globally it manifesting at the moment?
Well, I think the phenomenon I described earlier about the growing appreciation of intellectual property is not just in the United States. This is a global phenomenon. It's true in China, it's true in Japan, it's true in the EU, and I'm hearing that it's true in India as well. So, I mean, everyone has a stake in this. Every country, every entrepreneur, every person or company that develops intellectual property has a stake in the preservation of that value. So countries proceed at different paces, but I think it's all heading in the same direction, to a recognition that intellectual property is very, very important and it needs to be protected.
That's right. And how do you see the Indian legal system and the opportunities that are developing here when it comes to your profession?
You know, everything I hear about the practice and everything that I've seen, I find very, very exciting. First, you have a backdrop of one of the most dynamic economies in the world. I'm a big believer in the Indian story, the innovation here, the software, the number of software engineers, the investment that's being made, and the innovation. It's a very, very exciting story. And I think the legal profession, the lawyers I have met here and Indian lawyers around the world, I've been very, very impressed with. Yes. So there is a lot of talent here. It's really amazing.
Yes.
So I'm super impressed with the opportunities. The world, people talk about deglobalization, but I think that's kind of maybe a phenomenon between some countries. You might say the U.S. and China right now, but that's a short-term phenomenon. And I think the direction of travel is one direction, and that's the increased integration in the world. And that includes India, the West, and China. We're all going to benefit from that trade, exchange of ideas, and legal thinking.
That's right. But I want to also get a sneak peek into how the technological transformation is changing the legal profession back in your side of the world.
Well, I think it's only just begun. This generative AI, ChatGPT, and the like. We are, after all, we're wordsmiths. We're merchants of words. We put words together in a certain order, hopefully in a persuasive way. That's a lot of what we do. That's our written work product. That's what these large language models do. And so I think the models that we have now, ChatGPT, a year from now, the pace of change is so fast, a year from now, they're going to seem rudimentary. And we're not there yet. Right now, ChatGPT can generate some work product, which is maybe a first draft. Cyril, I don't know if you've experimented with that. It's nothing that you would want to present to a court, but it's something that you could work with. It's like a first draft. So I think in terms of how this is going to affect the legal profession and law firms, I think we're going to need more people who are trained as lawyers, but also technologists, kind of prompt engineer lawyers who can help exploit these large language models to get the best possible results fastest and most efficiently. So that's really what, at the end of the day, that's our goal, is to deliver services that are super high quality and do it efficiently. And I think these large language models are going to enable us to do that. In terms of the structure, the staffing within law firms, I think that's going to change. I think we're probably going to need fewer associates, frankly, but more associates who are technologically savvy.
Right. So this is a very big takeaway coming from you, that the legal profession is moving towards more techies who also know law, or maybe vice versa.
It's inevitable.
I would say.
It's inevitable.
Yes. What do you think about it, Cyril Shroff? And how fast is it moving towards this trend in India?
I think very fast. I think we are on the verge of a revolution. Though I am not a believer that lawyers need to be coders or coders need to be lawyers. I think we have to find a system where in an organization both work together. So I think it will create new forms of collaboration. I think the shape of the pyramid of a law firm, I mean, we're basically based on the apprenticeship model, where more senior people choose junior people and the junior people learn by osmosis. But a lot of what happens through the apprenticeship model will get substituted by this technology. So I think there will be correspondingly, the training burden will probably go to law schools, where some of the stuff which young associates learn in the first few years of working in a work environment will have to be outsourced back to the universities. And when the sort of workforce that comes in will have to be more ready from a point of view of hitting the ground running. So I think you'll start seeing the triangular pyramid changing a bit more into a cylinder type shape. That's how I see it developing, and I think it's happening very fast.
And do you think that the employment that is generated by legal profession, is that also going to shrink in times to come because of the technological shift, as is expected to happen?
No, I'm not. I think the composition will change, but I still continue to remain an optimist, because every day there are new laws and new situations arising. So lawyering is not going anywhere. You know, email did not, the initial view on email was it could never happen. And that email was going to kind of bring effectively the world to an end. None of that happened. Actually, we saw much more coming out of it. So I think AI is also going to add new varieties of work. I think the quality of lawyering and the skill sets that are required will change. But high-end lawyering is going nowhere.
Right. What do you think on this final point and this argument that is raging across the world? AI and is machine going to take over humans, or human intervention will still be required? John?
I mean, from an occupational standpoint or existential standpoint? Because, of course, there are some people, very prominent people, you know, people like Elon Musk and Larry Ellison and Bill Gates, who have gone on record saying AI represents potentially an existential threat. You know, from my standpoint, it's frankly hard to see that. The people who talk that way don't really paint specific scenarios where they see, you know, AI taking over the world, or, you know, creating robots that eliminate mankind. But there's no question that there are risks. You think, for example, the risks related to fake news, deep fakes. You know, where I come from in California, there was a bank, a very prominent bank that failed, Silicon Valley Bank.
Yes.
And it failed for, among other things, there really was a run on the bank because of, among other things, social media. A small, close-knit community started to raise issues about the stability of the bank. You could easily see kind of a fake news assault on banks and institutions, and in the political sphere as well. So there has got to be some type of controls for that type of risk. There's no question that there are risks associated with AI. And that's why everybody is thinking now and getting on board for the idea that we need to have some regulation of AI.
Yes, yes. And you've exactly brought about a very critical point, that you both are from legal profession, and law is going to play a very important role going forward in containing the risks of the technological shift that we are seeing across the world. And this is a place which is evolving very fast, and we'll keep an eye on that. So John Quinn, thank you so much for a very interesting conversation. And as always, Cyril Shroff, thanks so much for joining us on CNBC-TV18. With that, it's the end of this very riveting discussion on AI, as well as the global trends in litigation and where the profession of law is really heading. Thank you so much for tuning in to Big Deal.